as well as Mark Green, who's in the room, and I'm possibly missing somebody else who I can't see from here at this point. But basically, within the Irish Institution of, within the Society of Chartered Surveyors, what we have done is we have brought together 7 of the 12 professional groups who are involved or can have roles within the BIM space. And there's an open opportunity for others of the professional groups to join in as well. And what we wanted to do is to try and see, okay, as a professional body, with the idea of how can we lead in relation to BIM and how can we equip our members to be able to take advantage of the opportunity of BIM, but also to make sure that they themselves are aware of any risks that they are exposed to within it. We have had some, I suppose, an initial phase of, as you would have in any normal team, we've had our storming and our norming phase, where we have been trying to initially just look at what are the goals of those different professional groups in the BIM space. We have some groups, as Gary has shown, some of our quantity surveyors are way ahead in terms of what they're doing in relation to BIM, whereas there are other much smaller QS practices and practices who specialise in different areas who maybe haven't got anywhere as far along in terms of their BIM journey. How do we support both of those ends within that professional group? Similarly, on the geomatics space, for instance, we have groups like Murphy Surveys who are taking a leading position, partly because of the upskilling they had to do in relation to working in the UK, but also because they themselves have gone on their digital journey. But yet there are a lot of other companies who maybe aren't anywhere nearly as far. We've had some particularly interesting discussions with the valuations groups and the groups in the property and facilities manager. The comment that Gary was making about where is the value, what they're saying is that clients are not willing to make these payments around BIM. They can't see what the value proposition is for them. And also financiers who are actually putting up the money for these projects, until we can articulate to them what the value is for them individually, they're not yet necessarily willing to involve in that. So the question is, how do we as a professional body help our members to help the clients that we have and therefore make better outcomes for everybody? So what have we done to date? We obviously now know that the GCCs have changed, and they have included the roadmap for what the mandate is going to be, and there was a consultation phase on that. So we in the SCSI, we put in a response to that, as did a number of other groups within the room here, and that enabled us to also, I suppose, examine our own internal positions before we actually put in for that consultation. We also have been looking to feed into the CIC in relation to the update of the digital plan of works. So at the moment, the standard digital plan of works has a certain number of different professions identified within it, and what duties and what responsibilities each of those different roles have during the different stages of a project. But what we found when we looked at that from a Society of Chartered Surveyors point of view is that a lot of the roles that our members could and should play in order to actually be of benefit to overall projects, they were not being included. So we have added, and I'm not expecting you to be able to read that, it's just to give you an exemplar of the level of information or the level of input that we think that different of the surveyors can actually have along all of the stages of the digital plan of works. So we're feeding this into the CIC, and the idea that Alan had there of this exemplar project that comes under the heading of the CIC, this would feed into it as well, where it could validate this suggestion that we have around the different roles and responsibilities. We've also, for each of the individual professional groups, we've undertaken a gap analysis as to where we currently are in our groups, where our members are, around their knowledge of BIM and their ability to engage in BIM processes and BIM collaboration. Where do we want to be, and how do we get there in terms of the resources that we need, in terms of the upskilling, those certain elements. So we've pulled all of this together from each of the individual groups to try and see what our common areas are and what our specific needs for the individual groups are, to produce an action plan. And this is what we're working our way through at the moment. And it is challenging for us to get to us because basically all of our, volunteer members, like in the rest of the industry, are gone very, very busy. So trying to actually move this forward is something that, we want to be moving more quickly than we're able to do, but, this is the goal we have in mind. So member upskilling. We know that there is a lot of our members who are at very different stages along their own personal BIM maturity journeys. And we need to help those members, starting from the baby steps right the way up to the bigger picture, and being able to get involved in the larger commercial projects, being able to grasp the opportunity that BIM allows for us. To do that, we know that one of the things that we need to do is to produce for our internal members professional guidance notes, so that there are standard ways of working. Again, Gary referred to it, this idea that before we become embedded and entrenched in having bad ways of doing things, that we try and take a bigger picture view and a more connected view as to how we can actually work so that we are all delivering at the same standards. We then need to work on our external promotion. So in other words, making other professions within design teams, within construction, but also further out into the FM and commercial spaces, aware of what it is that we do and what value we can bring. So that conversation that Gary mentioned, that was him having around facade engineering, making people aware of the value of those conversations are. I had a conversation last night with some of the students that we have on our BIM Masters, saying about how they engage with surveyors, geosurveyors in this case. Rather than saying to the geosurveyor, can you give me a set of 2D plans? Why don't you say to the surveyor instead, this is the project that I'm involved with, this is the sort of work I'm going to do, can you advise me as to what the best way of collecting spatial data for this is, so that we can maximize the benefit of it. And it's those conversations where you allow each of the professions to actually bring their expertise and share it in a way that's of benefit to everybody. Okay? So to execute this, what we'll be looking at producing client guides from different surveying groups to the other different professions. We want to look at standardising templates for pre- and post-contract BEPS, so for your BIM execution plans, and also looking at standardised support documentation for tenders. Because again, at the moment, there is a shortage of knowledge here. Gary alluded to the fact that you often have, design teams creating the BEPS, which is not exactly necessarily the best for the outcome of the overall project. So we want to be able to feed into this. And that's what we're looking to do. And then there's also, I suppose, in relation to the leadership point, what we would like to have is to be, I suppose, stepping up and making our presence felt as the Society of Chartered Surveyors. Perhaps when the National BIM Council gets moving again, having a seat at that table. Last time round, there wasn't a survey voice on it. And I think that there is a lot of value that surveyors could bring to that one. And similarly, to continue to engage with the CIC around the digital plan of works and other activities that they're involved with, but also to continue to work with the OGP and government offices around the GCCs and other elements of that type. So that's just, I suppose, a quick snapshot of where we are in terms of the interprofessional group and what it is that we want to bring forward in terms of suggesting it. Okay? So I'm going to jump, so we will have a panel discussion later on, and I'm happy to answer any questions that we might have on that. I'm going to use this opportunity as well, just to, Alan has kindly allowed us to mention to you as well the BIM Cert project, which CitA are involved with, also ourselves in DIT and Future Analytics Consulting. The comment was made earlier about trying to get value out of BIM. One of the value pieces from BIM is full life cycle BIM. The element of being able to look at a project not just as being the design portion or the construction portion, but the full life cycle. And in relation to that, the EU has been very strong on the need for BIM to be an enabler of achieving energy targets as required under the EU Energy Directive. So what this BIM Cert project is specifically about trying to link BIM and the energy targets of the EU. So it's funded under the Horizon 2020 project. We have a number of partners in the project. It's led by Belfast Metropolitan College, and we've got Paul McCormack at the back of the room there. He's project managing it and keeping us all in line very nicely. We have Future Analytics Consulting, also here in Dublin, as well as DIT. We've got partners in Portugal and Lisbon, in Croatia, in Macedonia, and also the Construction Industry Training Board of Northern Ireland. The challenge that we are specifically addressing is the fact that blue-collar workers are quite often, they're time-bound. So we have a lot of skilled workers on sites, but we're not getting them upskilled into the BIM area. And part of it is because they're so busy on site, nobody wants to take time and say, let's bring them off site and train them for a while and then bring them back on again, because everybody's losing money while they're off site. They have practical skills, but they cannot necessarily access training. So there's money available to train them, but we can't afford the time to actually get them out off site to be able to do it. And if they're not upskilling, there's an impact for them individually, but there's also impacts for their employers, and there's impacts for the sector overall. It's great for us in design teams to be creating models and doing simulations and guaranteeing that we're reaching energy targets in the digital twin. But what happens if you then go out on site and the materials that are supposed to enable you to insulate your building in a particular way or get particular types of performance are incorrectly installed, or people make bad decisions on site? If that's happening, the value of all that work that was done in design is actually going to be lost. So this is about getting the people who are on site executing the construction that we have designed to understand why certain design decisions have been made and how it is that they need to actually utilise particular materials or particular systems or ways of building. So with BIM Cert, what we are trying to do is to set up a large-scale training and qualification scheme for the entire construction supply chain. It will enable collaborative working and to improve access to and transition from design to development to delivery in relation to near zero energy targets. It's about achieving efficiency in relation to energy and fabric, and it's about utilising BIM and virtual construction as the tool to enable us to do this. We have a group of the consortium of partners who I've mentioned. We have an advisory, technical advisory panel, which includes CitA, BRE, the City and Guilds, and a number of others. And we also then have external partners along the supply chain who are assisting us in terms of testing, in terms of analysing the methods that we're looking at to make sure that they are actually workable with different groups of workers. The BIM Cert audience, this is targeted at blue-collar workers, but it also looks at the broader piece as well. So everyone from on-site workers, but also site managers, and then moving it into the design team so that they understand that collaboration, that vertical collaboration that is needed. We're creating a beyond blended solution, which is a mix of e-learning, classroom sessions, self-directed study, social learning. Just-in-time learning is a really, really important factor of this to counter the fact that we can't take people off-site. How do we make sure that they're getting the information that they need at exactly the time when they need it? So it's a combination of face-to-face and digital, and being able to get the synergies and the maximum benefits that's coming from between the two of those. So starting point is a BIM readiness assessment, then moving into enabling people to understand the BIM basics that are relevant to them. So it's not going to be important for us to be teaching people who, let's say, are carpenters on site, what is going on in terms of simulation about steel or whatever it happens to be. It's the elements that are relevant to them. So that's the assessment tool will enable you to stream your learning in relation to what your knowledge needs actually are. And then you can see it's moving from the BIM basics into modelling, digital skills, information management, and then to the higher level targets, the ones around energy, the ones around achieving upskilling for the entire supply chain, improved quantification, improved life cycle management. So that's the upscaling that we're actually looking at on it. We are about halfway through the project at the moment. We have had a number of workshops with industry, but we are looking for more partners to be able to help us with testing the rollout of the methods and the training tools that we are creating, because eventually this will become a set of training materials which will be very accessible to anyone to use within their organisation. And because it's part funded, or it's because it's funded under EU rules, the involvement in the testing at the moment is free. Afterwards, there will be some costs that will be associated with it, but if you get in with us early, you're helping us and we'll be able to help you as well on it. So there's our contact details, and we'd be delighted if anybody would like to help out with it. Okay? So thank you very much. Okay, I'll now go back to chairing.